Dear people who need no introduction, and our today's guest, Professor Philipem Zimbardem, is one of them. Just to be brief, he is the Emeritus Professor at Stanford University, the Executive Director of the Stanford Center on Terrorism, the Chair of the Western Psychological Foundation, former Chair of the Council of Scientific Society Presidents, the holder of the Václav Havel Foundation Prize for his lifetime research on the human condition, and also soon to be the holder of the honorary degree from Charles University in Prague. So, please welcome Professor Philipem Zimbardem. So, Professor, is there anything you would like to share with us before we begin?
Well, I have about 20 questions students sent. I can answer 17 of them, but also open for new questions. I'm excited to be back in Prague. The curious thing is, the first time I was in Prague was not 2005 to receive Václav Havel's award, but in 1969, before any of you were born, actually before your teachers were born, there was an International Congress of Psychology in the suburbs. It was the first time during the Cold War that they had arranged for a few Americans, some Eastern and Western European psychologists and neuroscientists to get together. And I was privileged to be part of that group. But what was really sad was the condition of people in Prague and around. Because everywhere there were Russian tanks, some days, and some days nothing. So it was an incredible paranoia, because it was worse when there was no Russian tanks around. And when I would ask people, questions about how it feels to be dominated, we'd walk in a park, and then everybody's paranoid, looking, maybe there's microphones in the trees. So it was very, very sad. The good news was, that night when I was here, I was the guest of a family, Vera Bakarova. She had been my student a year before in the International Summer School in Leuven. Every year since then, that was 1967, the European Union arranges for European graduate students from all over to come for, I think, 1 month or 6 weeks to different cities. And they had, the first one had American and European social psychologists. And we had, in 6 weeks we had to design an experiment, run an experiment, and begin to test it. And she was one of my students. So she invited me to come to stay with her family. That night was the night, there was a big battle between Russia and the United States, who was going to be the first on the moon. And the Russians had the lead because they had invented Sputnik, if you remember. But the Americans won because Neil Armstrong was the first one on the moon. So I got all the credit. So they took me around and said, hey, it's American. I said, well, it was a hard job, but I did it. So it was really good. Anyway, so that's my historical introduction to Prague.
So thank you for your interesting introduction, and we can move to the first question. So, what gave you the idea for the Stanford prison experiment?
So the idea of the Stanford prison experiment simply is about the power of new, unfamiliar social situations to influence individual behavior. And we all want to believe that our decisions come from here, come from within. It's free will. We choose whatever we want to do. And our decisions are not constrained by things outside of us. The Stanford Prison Study, along with the previous important study by Stanley Milgram, challenges that notion that says so much of what we do is influenced by things outside of us. What other people are doing, the role we're playing, the social situation. So the idea for the Stanford Prison Study actually came from the earlier research by Stanley Milgram. And if you remember that study, I'm sure everybody does, it's a study he did in New Haven, Connecticut, which is where Yale University is, on the east coast of America, an hour or two above New York City. And in his study, he tested 1,000 people, mostly men, but he also tested one group of women. And these are not college students. These are people aged 20 to 50 years old who answered an ad in the newspaper of the local town. And what he pretended to do was to say, we want to see if people learn as well when they are punished for mistakes as when they are rewarded for getting the right answer. And that was the big lie. But really what he wanted to see was what happens when an authority tells you to act against your conscience, to continue to shock an innocent person at very extreme levels. So the important thing in his study was people have been talking about evil forever. Lucifer effect, evil in religion, evil in politics. But he was the first to quantify evil, give it a number. What % of people in any given culture, in any given society, would deliver maximum shock, 450 volts, to an innocent person on the demands of an authority? And in his study, when he described the study to 40 psychiatrists at Yale Medical School, they said 1%, only 1% of Americans would go all the way. Because to do so would be psychopathic. And we know from psychiatry that only 1% of any population are psychopaths, meaning they feel no guilt. As you know, the answer was not 1%, it was 65% or more. 2 of every 3 people went all the way. And it was remarkable. No one could believe that result. And it was repeated in other nations. And again, he tested one group of women, 65%. Now, several things interested me. Because he tested so many people, he didn't do the same thing over and over. He did many little experiments, right? In each one, let's say with 100 people, he varied one aspect of the social situation. So in one group, when you come into the experiment, he says, we're running late, have a seat. And you sit down and you watch 2 Confederates who look like you same age, same background, go all the way to 450 volts. Now it's your turn. Or you come in, you sit down, and you see people like you say, I quit, I refuse. Does it make a difference if other people model evil or good? The answer is it makes an enormous difference. When you're in the condition where people go all the way, they give you a negative role model, 91% of the people in that condition go all the way to the extreme. So it goes from 65, 2 of 3 to 9 of 10. Interestingly, you can reverse it. When you see people like you refuse, then 90% refuse. Only 10% can still go all the way. So for me, that's the most interesting part of the Milgram study that nobody talks about. So that what it means now is, when you as an individual behave in positive ways, and other people see what you do, you have a ripple effect. You can influence people by what you do that's right. But you can also influence people when you do the wrong thing. So it means we have to be aware that we are powerful social models for anybody who observes us, especially if we're adults and children observe us. So that's the big take-home message from the Milgram study. So for me, it influenced me to do the Stanford Prison Study because I said it's really rare that someone, an authority, says, do a bad thing. People don't do that very, very often. Except if you're in the mafia, I guess, or it's a gang. Usually people say, you observe, you're in a group and you see what the norm of the group is, you're given a position, you're the foreman, you're the boss. And so I wanted to redo the basic theme of the Milgram study demonstrating the power of social situations, but in a setting where no one tells people what to do. In the situation they're in, the role they're playing, the role pushes them in a direction to do what they believe is appropriate for that role. And so that's what we did. We had assigned people to role. We also put an ad in the newspaper in California. Stanford University is the other side of America. Yale is on the East Coast. Yale, Harvard on the East Coast. Stanford is on the West Coast. So I put an ad in the city newspaper, wanted college students, I wanted intelligent people for study of prison life. Could go up 1 to 2 weeks. And the key was that many people answered the ad, 75 to 100, and we invited each of them down, and we gave them a battery of personality tests. We only picked people with the most normal, most healthy. And then we randomly assigned, flip a coin, prisoner, guard, prisoner, guard, prisoner. So at the beginning of the study, there's no difference between the 12 people who are going to be guards and the 12 people who are going to be prisoners. And that's really critical. And they're physically healthy, psychologically healthy. And then, so now half are going to play guards and half are going to play prisoners. And we make it realistic. We give them, they wear different uniforms, different symbols of power or no power. And then we put them in a physical environment which resembles a prison, that you live if you're a prisoner in a cell with bars on the doors. And then we simply observe. So it's really, we create the situation and we sit back and we observe. So at that point, it's like psychological anthropology. We come in, we see the natives, and we're looking to see what happens. At the end of day one, I had 2 graduate students, 1 undergraduate. That was our team, 4 people. And I told them, nothing is happening. Tomorrow I end the study. It's not interesting. It was not interesting because it's 1971, ancient times. And in the 1970s, many American students and European students were revolting against the war in Vietnam as immoral and illegal. Many students on college campuses revolted. And the college administration in many places called the police onto the campus, and there were physical confrontations of hitting, fighting. And in one college at Kent State in Ohio, the police actually shot and killed several students. So students hated police, and by extension hated prison guards, so no one wanted to be a guard. And so the boys who were made to be guards in military uniform, they felt awkward. They hated to do that. But on the morning of the 2nd day, the prisoners rebelled. We dehumanized the prisoners by having them become numbers. We sewed a number on their smock, and we took away their name and said, "You are a number, 4612, 2693," and you became a number. And they did it the first night, then they said, "We refuse." And they locked themselves in their cell. And so now it was a confrontation. What were the guards going to do? So all 12 guards came in, they broke down the doors, and this was the only time they had a physical confrontation of the prisoners and guards. After that night, I said, it's not permitted. But at that point, when it was over, the guard said, "These are dangerous prisoners. We have to show them who is in charge, us over them." And at that moment, it's changed. At that moment, on morning of day 2, no one used the word experiment. No one said, "I quit the experiment." It was a prison run by psychologists and not a prison run by the government. And that critical incident changed the whole thing and made it really, really, really powerful. Oh, I should mention, little Stanley Milgram was a little Jewish boy that we were in the same high school class together in 1949, 1950 in the Bronx. We sat next to each other. In fact, usually I have a picture of him and me. He was a little guy, I was a big guy. Okay.
Thank you much. Thank you much for the answer. And another question is, so would you attempt the Stanford prison experiment again? And if so, how do you think the outcome would differ from the first time around, considering today's society?
Yeah, it's again interesting to think, would you do the study again? Would I do it the same? Would I do it differently? The amazing thing about the study is 45 years old. Why are we talking about it? It's a little study. Kids playing cops and robbers in a basement of psychology. So it taps into something very profound that people around the world are interested in. I think we would get the same results today. I think, if anything, there's a higher level of conformity. There's much less, students are much less willing to be deviant. And I think the fundamental issue of the power of the situation is really the same. What I would do differently, I made a big mistake because I said everybody in the study has to play roles. Prison guard, my graduate students were like the lieutenants, the undergraduate was the warden, and I played the role of superintendent of the prison. Meaning I was in a room, my office said superintendent of the Stanford jail. And that was a mistake. I should have had somebody play that role, and I should have only been the principal investigator research. Because as a researcher, I would have been objective, I would stand back. And when the second prisoner had an emotional breakdown, I would have ended the study. But in the role of superintendent, my job was to keep my prison going, because that's the job of a superintendent. And if you're an administrator, who do you care about? You care about your staff. I care about the guards, not the president. If you're a superintendent in a school, you care more about the teachers than the students, doctors and nurses more than patients if you're an administrator in the hospital. So that was a big mistake, because it meant that instead of observing suffering, which what the prisoners did more and more each day, because in 36 hours, the first prisoner had an emotional breakdown. And every day thereafter, I had to release him. Every day thereafter, another prisoner had a breakdown. The next day, next day, next. So I should have ended the study when the second one had a breakdown, to say we proved our point. Instead, my job was to maintain the integrity of the prison, to keep it going, until I was challenged the last day by the heroine of the study. So I would do it again. I would do it, in that sense, I would have somebody else be the superintendent. I would be the objective principal investigator.
Thank you. So you were talking about emotional breakdowns after a few days. So how do you predict the Stanford Prison experiment would have continued had you not put an end to it?
It's really hard to know. It definitely would have been like Abu Ghraib, which in 2004, the world was shocked to see the images, 10 images of American soldiers in Iraq, physically, sexually abusing, degrading prisoners they should have been protecting. And what was interesting about those images, they were the same visual images as in my study. So Abu Ghraib was the Stanford Prison experiment on steroids. And instead of going for 1 week, our study was supposed to go 2 weeks, we ended in 6 days. The abuses at Abu Ghraib went for 3 months, every night for 3 months, worse and worse and worse. And the images were guards putting bags over the prisoner's head, as our guards did, stripping the prisoners naked, as our guards did, having them simulate sodomy, as our guards did. But that happened over 3 months. So in our study, college students were doing that in a few days. And in fact, when the Abu Ghraib scandal erupted, many media came to me and came to people who had been in my study, guards had been in the study, saying, do you see a similarity? One of our guards, and I have a video of him, saying, the guard said, we could have gotten to do what they did. We needed a little more time. That was no big deal, what they did. But then he says the worst thing. He said, you know, I think that, when I look back, what got me most excited, and other guards, was to think of the prisoners as puppets. And we were the puppeteers, controlling those people, getting them to do things we wanted them to do. Who's them? Other students like you. So they all knew that this was an experiment, not a prison. They all knew, but for a flip of the coin, you could have been wearing the smock with a number. And the amazing thing was that that message, even years later, vanished. That when you're in a position of power, you assume you deserve that power. When people don't have power, you assume they deserve being powerless. That's powerless. But one of the main psychological variables in prejudice, in discrimination, is dehumanization. Thinking of other people as less than human. Because once you, in your mind, I think of you as less than human, then I can do things to you I would never imagine doing to friends or family. And it makes you into an object. Typically, dehumanization means you think of others as animals. So the Nazis had whole propaganda against the Jews as vermin, as rats, as eating all the food supplies. Many men think of women, objectify women. Again, one of the worst things about pornography is it turns women into objects for men's desires. So this is, for me, this was a really, really big problem. And I think it's teaching, especially, I know many of you are going to be psychology educators. It's almost principle one. Teach young people never to dehumanize anyone else for any reason, and to be aware when other people are doing it. Because language, so in the Milgram study, the main thing I take away is all evil begins with 15 volts. Once you press the first button, you're on the slippery slope of evil. 15 is nothing, just you press it, nothing happens. But what happens is 30 is next, and 45 is next, and then 450 is the end. So again, making a joke, talking about people from another race, another religion, and it's in a joke. You want people to laugh. But in the joke, what makes it funny, you're dehumanizing them, you're using images as if they were animals. And we can never allow that.
Thank you. So, the Sniffer Prison experiment was an example of how power can consume an otherwise good individual and influence their actions in sort of a negative way. So, how can we achieve the opposite result in getting an evil individual to do good?
I would change the last part of this question. So my mission in life is now giving up evil, giving up dining in hell, to only promote goodness around the world. That's why I go literally around the world. And the idea is, it's easy to get good people to do bad things. My book, The Lucifer Effect, has 15 chapters illustrating, not only in research, but in Rwanda, in Bosnia, in Nazi Germany, around the world, then and now, how easy it is for governments to get citizens to support programs of genocide. And now the question is, can we flip it? Confusion of responsibility. That when I'm in a group, normally I am responsible for my behavior. So if I see someone hurt on the ground, I'm alone, without thinking, I am responsible as a human being for helping them, because I assume if I'm there, they would help me. But now when I'm part of a group, even strangers, and they don't help, my responsibility gets diffused, and I don't help. So diffusion of responsibility is another variable which leads good people not to do bad things, never to do the right thing. And anonymity, anything that makes you feel anonymous, that is, it's in the dark, you're in a mask, you're in a costume, you're in a uniform. Under those conditions, you suspend your usual self, your usual identity. And again, you can do bad things if you're in a situation with other people like you doing bad things. So we have to know what are the psychological variables that push people in the direction of doing bad things, so that we now can say, let's reverse those. So the question I raised in chapter 16 of the Lucifer Effect is it possible to get ordinary people, anybody, to become a hero? Simple question. But before I ask the question, the whole notion of hero around the world has always been, heroes are unique. Heroes are special people. Heroes are different from us. That's why we elevate them. Typically, heroes have been men, military warriors. Going back in history from the Greeks, Agamemnon, Achilles, samurai warriors. And I said, no, that's not right. Because, you know, we also want to think of heroes as great inventors, as great statesmen. We want to think of Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa. There are many heroes who are, A, not men necessarily, and are heroes not because they killed more of the enemy, but because they did good in special ways. But the people I just mentioned have organized their whole life around sacrifice, around heroic deeds. So heroes, in the big picture, make personal sacrifice to make the world better by their deeds of sacrifice. And when you are a big hero challenging evil, you could die. And in many cases, like Martin Luther King, other people, they ended up being killed. So I don't want to be killed. I want to do little deeds, but I still want to do my research. I want to teach. I want to do other things. But so I decided to start a non-profit foundation in San Francisco called the Heroic Imagination Project, HIP, HIP. In the old days, hip means to be cool. To be hip was to be cool in the 70s. So we want to say, we want everybody to be a hipster. And the idea is very simple, to say, we want to encourage new research on heroism. Until recently, there's been almost no research on heroism. And the amazing thing is, there is no introductory psychology text in the world that has the word hero and heroism in the definitions. Evil, aggression, violence, hostility, yes. How could it be that in psychology we don't even mention heroes? And again, when I looked through all introductory textbooks, including mine. I had the oldest Psychology in Life, one of the oldest textbooks in the history of psychology, and I never even thought about it. So I said, that has to change. And so the idea is, can you create an educational program which teaches young people how to be everyday heroes? Meaning, how to do deeds of kindness and caring automatically, that you do it all the time. It becomes a social habit. So we think of heroism, everyday heroism, as learning a social habit, a sociocentric habit of each day doing something to make the world better, by giving people a compliment, by making people feel special, by learning their name, by making eye contact. A very set of very simple procedures. And so I organized a group of people in San Francisco to develop educational lessons. And what we thought about is, what we should do is think about, what do we know in social psychology, cognitive psychology, that we could organize and then give away to high school. We started in college and high school students and teachers, where we present the material in a very interesting way. Young people live in a visual world, so we're going to organize all of our lessons around provocative videos. We're going to show you a video, and then the teacher asks questions. We give the teacher a script, so teachers don't lecture. Teachers learn the script, they show the video, they ask a question. Students now don't respond like a group, everybody raise their hand. A teacher organizes a class in pairs, ideally a boy and a girl working as a team. And then the teacher asks a question, then the teacher says share with each other, and then the teacher asks a personal question, think of a time, let's say one lesson is called transforming passive bystanders into active heroes. That's one of our lessons. We have 6 lessons, and I put it under the umbrella of understanding human nature. And another lesson is how do you transform people who have a fixed mindset, which is static and limited, to having a growth mindset, meaning every ability is improvable, perfectible with practice and effort. This is the work of Carol Dweck at Stanford University. She has a book called Mindset. How do you transform prejudice and discrimination into understanding and tolerance? So we have these lessons, and each one is about 20 pages. We provide all the videos, but it's very dynamic. Teachers talk, students react, teachers talk again, show a video, and so forth. And so I created this material, we tested it in many schools in California and Western United States. And then, whenever I gave a lecture in Europe, and I go to Europe very often for various things, I would present these programs. If you're interested, we license the material to you, and then I do a training. So I train a group of teachers or trainers who then train teachers. So now our program is, it just came from Budapest. We are in more than 1,200 high schools all over Hungary, in remote areas in Hungary. We are all over Poland, in Warsaw, in Krakow, in Wrocław. We're in Sicily. My family is Sicilian, and we're in the ghetto in Palermo, in Corleone, the Godfather town. We're in Australia. We are in Iran. I just came back from Tehran. I trained some women in Tehran who are delivering our program in Farsi. And we hope that, I will meet some people here this afternoon. We hope to have our program in the Czech Republic very soon. It's exciting. Students love it, teachers, and of course we measure impact. So the other thing that's important is when anyone tells you they have a new program, the first question is, does it work? What is the evidence? So as psychologists, that's the most important question. Show me the evidence. Yes, obviously if you have a program, you would like to think it works, but what is the evidence? What behavior changes? How do you evaluate it? And so whenever we do a program, we evaluate the impact on the teachers, the impact on the students, and now we want to show the impact on parents as well. So one of the interesting things we do is, we know from a lot of research in cognitive psychology that when you learn something and you're learning it in the mindset of, as I tell you this, you're going to have to tell her tomorrow, versus you're learning this, you're going to have to remember on an exam. When you have a cognitive tuning set of transmitting idea, you learn it better. Because in a sense, you're like a teacher. So the last lesson is, exercises, what is the two most interesting things you learned today? They write it down. Who would you like to share it with? You write down, my mother, my cousin, boyfriend, girlfriend. And they say, okay, well share it, and then next week come back and tell me what the people said. So now, every student is a teacher. Every student takes the information and now has to reorganize it in their mind, because they're going to have to share it with someone else. Somebody's going to ask them questions. What do you mean? What do you mean bystander? What do you mean diffusion? I don't know what that means. So now we show that students in our program learn the material even better than when they're in a class and somebody's giving a lecture. So again, it's really exciting. This program is going global, around the world. Oh, in Bali, Indonesia, I'm going to go next week. In Geelong, Australia. So it's really like a social psychological movement, slowly building, and we hope it's going to. There's several groups in Prague that are interested. Literally, I'm going to meet with them this afternoon, and I hope they accept it.
And if so, how do they differ?
Yeah, when I was a child, I grew up in poverty. I grew up in a ghetto in New York City called the South Bronx. New York City is organized around 5 areas: Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, Long Island, Staten Island. And I grew up in the worst part of New York, because my family was uneducated Sicilian immigrants, and my father often didn't work. So we were on relief, meaning the government gave us money to live, a minimum amount of money. And the problem with, if you grow up in any ghetto, it's a toxic environment. I mean, it's physically toxic, meaning typically the paint in those days had lead in it. The air was toxic. There was always garbage in the street. So, and in those days, there was really no public health. I mean, I'm talking about 1938, ancient time. And so many children got contagious diseases of all kinds. I developed whooping cough, but there was scarlet fever, polio, many diseases that poor children always got. And if it was a contagious disease, if you were 2 years old and younger, you were confined to your apartment. If you're older, you had to go to a hospital for all children in New York City who had contagious disease of every kind. So the hundreds and hundreds of children in beds lined up. And in 1938, there were no medication. No penicillin, no sulfa drug. What does that mean? Children died. If you have a contagious disease and there's no medication, you die. Not all of them, but many of them. And it was horrible. I mean, children are crying. So these are children from age 3 to maybe 17 or something. Hundreds and hundreds, boys and girls only. And so this is, so I spent 6 months there. And it was clear that the nurses couldn't help you, the doctors couldn't help you. Visiting days were 1 hour on Sunday. 1 hour. If you're a child, you know, your sense of time, you know, you expect to see your parents. And then sometimes I was there in the winter. And in the winter in New York in those days, we had huge snowstorms. And in order to come, my mother would have had to walk 6 blocks from our house to the metro, 6 blocks from the metro to the hospital and then back. And I was 6 years old, my brother was 4, another brother was 2, my mother was pregnant. So clearly there were times she couldn't come. And if they couldn't come, what? They couldn't call. Poor people didn't have phones. I mean, again, the times are so, you know, now everybody has a cell phone. So you wait all week, Sunday, all excited, then nobody comes and nobody calls. And so pretty soon you learn you have to be self-reliant. I can't trust my parents, I can't trust the nurses, I have to succeed by myself. And also I became very religious. It's not me alone, it's me and God. So we will work a deal. Okay, I'll be a good kid if you make me survive, and I'll do good for you later on, which I'm doing now. So the problem then was also because everything is contagious. Even if families could afford it, they couldn't give you any present because you couldn't take it out. So the only thing we had were comic books. And that was the start of superhero comic books. Captain Marvel, Superman. And so we would, so I didn't go to school. I went in when I was 5 and a half, and I came out after my birthday at 6. So the only thing we had were comic books. So I would hold up, we'd read, you know, we look at the pictures. And then what I would do is, let's say there's older boy next to an older girl, I'd say, what is this? And they say, W-O-W, it means wow. What does that mean? It means exciting. You know, they say, wow, it's great. And then I would get a pen, I would write it down. So I learned to read and write on my own as a child in this hospital. But it was all based around superheroes. And again, in your imagine, especially you're lying in a bed like, imagine you could fly like Superman. So that was the vision I had. And now, many years later, what we're doing is creating what we call heroes in training. That is, everyone could be a hero, not flying. And when I tell students, you know, every superhero, Spider-Man, Batman, Wonder Woman, they envy you. Well, What do you mean they envy me? You have something they don't have. What is that? You have a brain. They don't have a brain. None of them have a brain. They can fly, bullet shoot, they go up the building, they can swim underwater. They are the brainchild of a cartoonist. So you could design your own superhero, but they can't design you. So now the burden is on you to use your brain wisely and well, to make the world better. Not by superhero deeds, but each day doing a little deed of kindness, making the world better for someone. Maybe start with your mother, start with your family, start with in your school. And then we say, again, we know that heroes are always more effective in a team. So why don't you create a hero squad, you and one or two other people, against bullying, against injustice, against prejudice. And so this is the kind of thing we are promoting. But I do have to say, even Václav Havel was really one of my great heroes, because when I received his award, usually people at that level, you know, there's a ceremony, they give you the award, they shake it. He spent many hours with me, personally. I had lunch with him, breakfast, in his suite. He told me stories, I shared stories with him. He knew, he has an assistant who knows everything about me. And he was a unique person. Here he is, admired around the world, and when you're with him, he's the most ordinary person. But, you know, you think back, what he was really telling the Czech people before the revolution, he said, you know what? The reason we are oppressed by the Soviets is because we have psychologically accepted that concept, that we are passive, that we cannot do anything. So because we resign ourselves to being passive, then we become that. So really what he did was start a psychological revolution. That revolution starts in your mind. That is, we have to say, we resist, each one individually, against injustice, against intolerance, against totalitarian governments. Not with guns, not with knives, but just in our mind. And when we do it collectively, when we all do it, then we create a revolution, a peaceful, loving revolution. So it was unique. No one in history had ever, for me, combined psychology with poetry and political revolution. So again, I came back a number of years to Forum 2000 after that, and he was always available, always kind, always friendly.
Thank you. And the next question is, was being a psychologist all you ever wanted to be professionally? Or was there something else you could have become? Should your journey have been different?
I think I would have liked to be a journalist. I'd like to write. It seemed to me journalists could have a big impact, especially journalists who travel around the world covering world events. So I think I would have, if I had not been a psychologist, I would have been not a war correspondent, but really international reporter of international news. Now the other thing about growing up poor is you never leave your neighborhood. So you live, I live in the Bronx, you never went 20 minutes away to a different part of New York City until you got to be a teenager or more. Your world gets compressed to only things that are familiar, familiar. And I was always curious on what's happening on the other side of the rainbow.
Thank you. I think that you mainly know because of your Stanford Prison experiment, but I also read about your research on shyness. So can you tell us something about it, please?
Sure. In one way, it's sad for me to imagine that when I die, there'll be a tombstone that said he was the superintendent of the Stanford Prison experiment. Terrible, terrible. I would rather it said He was the founder of the Shyness Clinic, which helped many, many people become less shy and more outgoing. So when I finished the study in 1971, I was lecturing to my class. At Stanford, I had big classes, 300, 500, 1,000 students, because I'm a very popular teacher. I entertain, I show movies, I play music. I entertain as well as educate. And so in my class I say, why does anybody care about this little experiment? How many of you are going to be prison guards? How many of you are going to be prisoners? None. I said, however, I would bet many of you are shy. I bet many of you in this class, in this audience, feel you can't raise your hand if I ask a question. I have a job, you don't ask for a raise. If you like some boy or girl, you can never say, hey, let's go for coffee, let's go for a drink. So really, in many cases, you become your own prisoner and guard. The guard makes the rules that limit the freedom of prisoners, and so you become the guard that limits your freedom. You say to yourself, no, I can't do. I can't talk, I can't raise my hand, and then you become the reluctant prisoner in your own jail. So I say shyness, my metaphor is shyness is a self-imposed psychological prison of silence. So that was the metaphor I used. My students said, wow, that's really interesting, we never thought about that. Many students came up and said, I'm really shy, could you say more? I said, no, I can't say more. You know, I'm not shy, I never studied shyness. And it turned out, again, like heroism later, in 1972, there was no research on shyness in adolescents or adults. The only research on shyness was by developmental psychologists who study shyness in little children. And when they got to be teenagers, there was no psychologist studying teenagers at that time. So it was as if shyness stopped. I said, no, it can't be. I have relatives who are shy. I have students in my class I know who are shy. For example, I have office hours. I say, come to my office. They can't come, or they come, I see them down the hall. I say, come. And so I said, okay, you know what? I will teach a class in shyness. I will learn about it. I only want shy students to come to my seminar. And so when we come, I say, what do you want to know? Are boys more shy than girls? What makes you shy? What triggers the shyness? How can you overcome shyness? So I write all these things. I say, you know what? Nobody has the answer. So we together are going to have to find the answer. How are we going to do it? We can do a survey. First of all, the question is shyness unusual or not? So each of you have to interview and make a survey of 10 friends. So the class was like 10, so it's 100. And they come back, and it turns out the majority of their friends are shy. So maybe shy people have shy friends. So then we did a big survey in the introductory side. And it turned out 40% of all the students said, I am a shy person. Shyness is in me. 40% more said, I used to be shy, but I have outgrown it. 15% said, I'm shy in some situations. When I go on a blind date with a girl or boy. When I have to perform in public, my mother makes me play the piano in front of relatives. When I have to give a speech that I'm not prepared for. And you add up the numbers and say, wait a minute. Only 5% say, I'm not shy. Not shy now, I'm not shy then. So to be not shy is unusual. To be shy is typical. And since then, we have given our survey to more than 100,000 people around the world, and we get the same result. In fact, now, shyness is increasing. More and more people around the world say, I think of myself as a shy person. And the biggest problem we have now is young men who live in virtual reality of playing video games and online pornography. And they have given up social reality, social connection. And I wrote a book recently, Man Disconnected, in some places called Man Interrupted. We can talk about that later. So then, we did a lot of research on cross-cultural research. Shyness varies in different cultures. It's highest in Asian cultures. It's actually lowest in Jewish cultures. We could ask why later. So it's really culturally based, but in general, 40 to 50% of people in any culture say, I think of myself as a shy person, and it's a problem. I choose not to be. Now, what's interesting is, most shy people are introverts, but not all. So an introvert is somebody, I have to make a choice to do things alone or in a group. If I'm a creative artist, I'd rather be alone. I'd rather do my painting. If I'm a scientist, I'd rather be in my lab, you know, trying to win the Nobel Prize. But if you invite me to a party, I go and I enjoy it. Extroverts would always rather be at the party than alone. Shy people want to be at the party, but make themselves alone. Now, the curious thing is we have found out, although most shy people are introverts, there are shy extroverts. How would that be? It's a paradox. Meaning, they have learned how to pretend to be not shy. They learn the skills. You make eye contact, you talk, and it's always when you are in a position of power. So if I'm the interviewer and I'm shy, it doesn't matter because I'm asking you the questions and you answer. On television, when you see somebody being interviewed, the person being interviewed never asks the interviewer a question. Never. And so it's safe. Stand-up comedians are almost all shy. Most talk show hosts are shy that I have studied. When I wrote the book, I wrote 2 books about shyness, and I went around doing media all over. And I say, "Are you shy?" They would back up and say, "Well, yeah, now you say that." I say, "Oh, tell me about your shyness." So I would reverse it. And sure, most of them would, but they're not shy when they're in a position of power. In my position, I ask the question. In my position of power, I start the interview and I end it. Well, in real life, that doesn't happen. You know, we mutually agree. Who asks the question, who listens, who talks.
Thank you. So, what would you advise people who are shy and they don't want to be shy? They want to do something against it?
Sure. 2 things. Read the book, Shyness, What It Is. So again, once we did the research on shyness, my orientation has always been that in psychology we are blessed compared to if we're in history or geography or other fields, because what we know can make the world better if we as students and teachers think about how to package it in a way that other people can use it. So when we were doing the research, we kept thinking, well, could we use these ideas to help people be less shy? So when I wrote the book, Shyness, What It Is, the first half is, what's the research, what do we know from all the studies done. And then the second part is, what can you do about it? It's all exercises that you could do. And then my students at Stanford said, hey, we know so much about this new thing. Why don't we start a clinic? Why don't we help people who are shy be less shy? So we started an experimental clinic, free. And for different groups, we did different things. So for one group, we only taught social skills. It's like an acting class, how to walk, how to present yourself, how to make eye contact, how to use hand gestures. For others, we focused only on what was in your mind. What are the negative things you say about yourself? So it was really kind of a cognitive modification. Stop saying I'm too fat, stop saying I'm too ugly, stop saying nobody likes me. And we make you, as soon as you hear it, say stop, say the opposite. And then in the third group, we worked on a physiological, emotional thing. People who blush, people who get physical anxiety. So those are 3 things. Change what you think, change how you feel, and the other thing, change how you behave. So it's really behavior, thoughts, and feeling. And when you do that, we have 100% cure. Everybody in our clinic, everybody. So then we did it only for Stanford students and then Stanford personnel, secretaries, and then we moved it out into the community for ordinary people. and it's still in practice in Palo Alto University, where I used to teach. It's a professional training program in California, near Stanford. And 40 years later, it's still there. So for me, so that's, I would really prefer to be known as the person who helped the world become less shy, one. And then secondly, as for all psychologists, our mission is thinking about how we can translate theories and research into practical applications that help resolve social, political, and personal problems.
Thank you so much for inspiring advice for all of us. Maybe there's the opportunity for you, the audience, so feel free to ask any question you want.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. And just practice your social skills. You have a chance right now.
We need somebody to start. Okay. Yes. What is your name?
Lucy.
Lucy. Great. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds or no diamonds? You know, I mean, you know the Beatles song.
I'm sorry, but I'm too shy to
No. Well, you do it together. Okay, there we go. Yay. Okay. Bravo. So you just need somebody to break the ice. So again, the point is always be the first one. Then everybody. You are.
My name is Philip. Hello. Nice to meet you.
What year are you in?
I study psychology.
What year? First, second?
Freshman year.
Good. Alright.
Okay, so I was wondering, what do you think about romantic relationships? According to your theory, it should probably be a matter of consequences. You know, it would be about accepting some social roles and fulfilling their goals, rather than about personalities of the people. On the other hand, it could be a matter of inner choice.
But matter what?
Inner choice.
Inner choice, you know, I chose to be with, you know. But if so, why would so many people chose to be stuck in some kind of destructive relationship? I would like to hear your opinion about that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem for most people in the world. Developing a romantic relationship that's good for you, that works. The big problem with shy people is they never give off cues of availability. So let's say I'm a man, I'm attracted to you. You look at me, and all I have to do is look back and smile. You look at me, I look at you, and I look away. I put a wall down, and you leave. So again, it's what things we teach in our shyness clinic is how do you make yourself available, not to everybody, but to people you think you would like to know more. Now maybe initially we're attracted by looks. You're attracted by somebody who has beautiful eyes, beautiful nose, beautiful hair, something about them, beautiful face, the way they're dressed. So we start superficially, but then, meaning then we're going to spend some time together, and while we're spending time together, I say, tell me about yourself. And I tell you about myself. I say, this is not a good fit. Could be, you want to be a nuclear physicist, and I'm a psychologist. I didn't know your language. Or you're a drug dealer, and I don't take drugs. But essentially, we start with a physical, we start with people that are physically attracted to us. We hope we are physically attracted to them. And then we look for the social part of the relationship that we hope will develop. Relationships are difficult. I mean, they're difficult to navigate because people have different values, different backgrounds. Now, as I said, with young men around the world being obsessed with video games and pornography, many of them are giving up connecting with other people, even boyfriends as well as girlfriends. And many of them, if you start really young, you never learn social communication skills. Many of them stop chatting, they only text. Now, the important thing about interpersonal relations, it's synchronous. I say, how are you? You can't say, wait, let me think about what the answer is. You have to answer. If we chat, I say, how are you? You look at the things, what does he mean? You can answer what you want. So, what's exciting about a personal relation, it's synchronous. You asked me, and it's a dynamic thing. When you have to value that dynamism, that's exciting. If dynamism means, I don't know how to answer, I feel stupid, I feel foolish, then I avoid that. So again, young men are not learning basic social communication skills. And it's, now the other thing we say, also with shyness, is you can be shy, but you can be a good listener. We teach you how to be a good listener. And the world loves not shy people love good listeners. So how are you a good listener? I make eye contact when you're asking me a question. I'm thinking about it. I go like this. I'm nodding. I'm smiling. I say, tell me a little bit more. So now you like to talk to me rather than to somebody else who just sits like this. So we teach you how to be a good listener, and the world will come to you and say, hey, I want to tell you some idea I have. Rather than they're going to go to somebody else who, when you talk to them, they just look like that. Another question. Good question.
So, I'm John.
John. Thank you.
I'm from second year psychology major, and I have a question. Do you have any opinion on European philosophy? If you do know it, or probably take any ideas from it? That's my question.
Okay. No, it's too broad. I mean, okay. You have. I don't know European philosophy. I mean, French philosophy, I know a little bit is different than Italian philosophy. In general, one of the problems has been that in Europe, philosophy has always been more important than psychology. Thinking more important than acting. So the European summer school in social psychology was developed to get European students to think, to learn that you can transform good ideas into research action. Because otherwise, if you're a philosopher, you have an interesting idea and then you say, well, what did Sartre say? What did this one say? Let me read more, let me think more, let me talk more, and then you never do research. So the idea is, you have to have some background for the idea you do, but the idea is, do an experiment. Get data. See, does it make a difference? If it doesn't make a difference, reject it. Get something new. So really, we encourage students to have a philosophical background, but only as a foundation. And the idea in psychology, ideas are the foundation for action. And the action first is getting evidence, and then the second is transforming your evidence into an application. As I said, into a shyness clinic, into a hero project. You need people in the back. There you go. You are.
Hello, my name is Clara. I study psychology. I'm in the 5th year now.
Wow.
I've got 2 questions for you. My first question is about your clinic.
Yeah.
If there are just psychologists working there, also psychiatrists. And then I'd like to ask you, where is the border between like shyness and other diagnoses like social phobia or so?
Yeah. Good, wonderful question. Keep right. There are no psychiatrists in our clinic because In America, psychiatrists are drug dealers. It's an embarrassment. All of psychiatry, at least American psychiatry, and I know in British psychiatry as well, have been bought out by big pharmaceutical companies. The business of psychiatry is now mental illness is a brain disease. That's their definition. And therefore, if it's a brain disease, you treat it the way you treat cancer, with medication. Not with talk. So they do not do psychotherapy anymore. They do not do psychoanalysis. They don't do any talk therapy because it's a waste of time. A treatment is you come to my office, you have an anxiety disorder, you have paranoia, whatever it is. I give you a 12-minute interview, and then I prescribe a drug. And you come back a week or two later, I give you another interview, I modify the drug dose or a different drug. And that's what psychiatry has become. For me, it's an embarrassment. If you go to a psychiatry conference, in a huge conference hall, there are big, big, big exhibits with the name of the drug. And in front of it are beautiful women in tight blouses giving away gifts. The people selling books about psychiatry are in the corner, little booths. So it's all about drugs, which is really, really, really very, very, very disturbing. And it's going to go in that direction. What that means also, in medical school, the worst students now go to psychiatry. Worst medical students go to psychiatry because it's boring. Psychiatry has become boring because it's not exploring the mind, not exploring human nature. It's only deciding which drug to give which patient for how long. So again, shyness, they call it a comorbidity. Shyness overlaps with social phobia. Shyness overlaps with a number of personality disorders. So again, in our clinic, that's the job of the therapist, is to identify what are the other related psychological problems that this person has in addition to being shy. So shyness is the normal term. Social phobia is really the psychological term. It's fear of other people. I think we have time for one or two more questions.
Hello, I'm Marek. I study for the 4th year, and I would like to ask you, are you personally afraid with all your experience that the psychology as a whole, or specifically the social psychology, in the future could go in some areas, practical or theoretical, that you consider to be dangerous or forbidden? What should, in your opinion, psychology avoid?
The danger. The good news is that most governments don't take psychology seriously. The bad news is that if they did, many governments now around the world, especially in Eastern Europe, are becoming totalitarian, are becoming right-wing, are becoming fascist. And this is disturbing. I gave a talk yesterday at Forum about the rise of totalitarianism and the suppression of democracy. It's clearly in Hungary, as the work. I just came from Budapest, and the Orban government is horrible and getting worse. The last week when I was there, the government arranged for a rich company to buy the only daily newspaper, which was called Freedom to the People, that's been 50 years old, the oldest daily newspaper. The company bought it and said, we are shutting it down, firing everybody, because it's not economically feasible. And so there's no newspaper opposing the government now. No opposition media. And so this is an example. Same thing now in Poland. In Poland it's different because it's religious. It's older religious people from the suburbs, from rural areas, have taken over the party in Poland. And so, for example, they put on the vote, women cannot have an abortion for any reason. If women have an abortion, they could go to jail, and the doctor could go to jail. even if the woman was raped, even if the fetus has a disease or is abnormal, and it lost, but everybody I know in Poland said the gut will come back in some other way. In America, we have Donald Trump, who is a demonstration of mindless power of a rich man to say whatever he wants to do. But he will not win the election, but he will get 100 million people voting for him, which is astounding. I can't believe it. Yesterday at Forum, the president of Slovakia gave a very moving talk. He said, I cannot understand, there are people in my country who voted into parliament several right-wing fascists. Now his party is not, but now he has to work with people. So there are people in every country. So it's people around the world I think are feeling powerless. That is, we work hard, we don't make enough money. Many people actually long for communism, because in communism everything was bad, but it was equal. Now things are not so good, but you look and your neighbor has got a better house, a better job, more money, a better car. So people are feeling inequality. And these dictators work for those people to say, vote for me, I will make your life better. But they never say how. So Trump says, I'm going to make America great. He never says how he will do it. And clearly he can't. So for me, the danger is for politicians to understand the psychology of persuasion. We know how to persuade people. We know from the work of Bob Cialdini, my friend, the power of persuasion. We know the power of social influence. So I am glad that politicians don't take us seriously, because we have lots of techniques that they could use to become more powerful, more influential. One more question, then I want to show a little video. Yes? Okay, after this we need one more woman.
Huh? Hello.
No, I said after you we need one last woman. So
Yeah.
How many guys?
Okay.
But your name.
Name, yes, okay. I'm Thomas.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay.
So I want to ask you, you talked about the harmonized, Stanley Milgram scale, so joke and... So, my question is, how effective is the opposite way if you do it?
Right.
And, or is it more effective to do it open their eyes in one moment? Or is it possible to get them back? Sorry for my English.
No, I understand. No, I guess he's saying I'm saying once you press 15 volts, it's easier to do 30. It's easier to do 45. Can you stop it? Well, yes. I mean, 2 of every 3 people went all the way, but only 1/3 at some point quit. 1/3 said, I refuse to go on. So we know that the minority, in every study, in every conformity study, there's always a minority, 10%, 20, never more than 30, who resist. And that's where I got the idea, is who are those people who resist powerful social pressure and say, no, I won't go. I will not continue to do what you want me to do. And those are heroes. And that's what we have to study. Who are the people? What is it about them that when everybody else is going all along, they say, no, I'm not going to do it. In a funny way, I think of them as positive deviants. When somebody's a deviant, they don't go along with the group. Okay? And I'm saying, so one of the things I get my students to do, I say, most of us live our life, we want other people to like us. And so we do whatever they want. I dress the way you dress. I carry my books in a certain way. I like the same music you like. So that gives us something in common. And what's curious, if you look at pictures of students from 10 years ago, from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they look different than us. They're different than you. Because again, we don't realize there's a conformity that binds you together. So I give my students an exercise I give to you. Tomorrow, when you wake up, put a black square on your forehead with a magic marker that you could erase. You don't even see it. Once you put it on, you look in the mirror, you put it on. And then And you go about your business. People say, what is that? It's a black square. People go, they say, take it off. I say, no, I'm just trying something. I'm just trying something. People get crazy, say, take it off. They say, forget it. And so really, what I'm trying to do is to say, now you are doing something deviant. You're doing something different. They don't expect it of you. And you're going to feel the pressure they put on you to be what they want you to be. And suddenly you realize it's the same way with your attitudes. They want you to be for or against the government. They want you to be for or against ISIS, for or against whatever it is, for or against the soccer team from here. And so if you can resist one day without going like this, then suddenly you feel you have now independent power. You don't have to be what the group wants you to be. And that's really, so that's an important exercise. At the end we say, each student writes that, what did I do? How did I feel? What was the pressure put on me? And at the end, did I think it was worthwhile? So this is a nice demonstration I think I would like to do. Last question, but we need a woman because we have too many guys, only one lady. Yes, ma'am. You are in the back.
Hi, my name is Catherine.
Catherine.
And,
what year?
Sorry?
What year?
First year, I just started.
Good.
So,
baby.
Yeah. Sure. My question is generally psychology seems to be fascinated by the bad aspects of human nature, basically. And but obviously now the trend is changing a little bit. People are more interested in the positive side of humanity. I wanted to ask if you can see a difference between, for example, in the past, everyone was focused on negative, if it's getting more positive, or if it's continuing in the same direction.
No. It's, yeah, good question. No. The devil is more interesting than God. Okay. God is boring. He or she does good things we don't even notice. The devil does things that are dramatic. Evil is dramatic. So the Setkání study and Milgram's are dramatic, are interesting because of the drama. You don't expect them. But in fact, psychology, the positive psychology movement started 20 years ago by Marty Seligman, a colleague of mine, is really changing psychology. So people are studying mental health, not mental illness. There's a whole movement, mostly by women in psychology, on studying peace rather than conflict. So really there's a big movement in psychology toward focusing on bringing out the best in people rather than understanding the worst. And my hero project is part of that, to say, there are a lot of people who do bad shit. Let's focus on people who do good shit, okay? And let's encourage them how to be more effective. So what I want to do is I want to end with I gave a talk in Poland recently, and a student, a college student, made this little video, 1 minute, 20 seconds, and it's so full of information. So it introduces my hero project, and then, as I said, one of the lessons is how do you transform passive bystanders into active heroes, and it presents the introduction to that. So let me see if I can get it going.
Hello, I'm Philipa Zimbarda, President and founder of the Heroic Imagination Project. Our main focus is promoting the idea that heroes are ordinary people who take extraordinary action in challenging situations in their lives. Effective heroes do the right thing when other people are doing the wrong thing, or more often when they're doing nothing. And also to expose evil in all of its many forms as a whistleblower. We believe heroism begins in the mind, begins with thinking about yourself as a hero. Thinking about yourself as having an inner hero that we will help express through our lessons, our ways of rethinking the nature of good and evil. Transforming bystander apathy into heroic action. Bystander apathy is what characterizes what's known as the bystander effect. In emergency situations, the more people present, paradoxically, the less likely anyone's to help. That's called the bystander effect. It was generated many years ago by the brutal murder in New York City of the woman Kitty Genovese, where many people heard her screams and did nothing. As soon as one person helps, then in seconds, that help is expanded. Our message is, be the one. Be that person who ignores the social norm of doing nothing and creates a new social norm of doing something.
It's amazing. So again, I think much more, we need young people to work with cartoonists. So you get so much information across in an interesting way, especially when we want to take our lesson to middle school, primary school. So there's many exciting videos we show in our program, but I'm trying to encourage creative cartoonists to take psychological messages and put them into this format. With that, I say thank you so much. Be well.
Our time is up, but I'm sure that we could keep on talking with Professor for ages, but we know that you're very busy here in Prague. And so on behalf of our students of Department of Psychology, I would like to thank you for your visit and your very kind and inspiring words. So thank you so much. Applause again, maybe.
If anybody wants a selfie, they could come here.
Before your selfies, we bought you a nice present as a way of saying thank you. So.